Hello, and welcome back to another episode here at the SteelerFury.com podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Coleman. You know me as Smith is Smoking on the Message Boards, joined by the best colleagues and co-hosts that monies can't buy. Oh, look at Will. He's got to look just as good as Corey here, going with his semi-muscle shirt here. You know him as Will Massasack, as Bradshaw to Ben, and Corey Karbowski. You know him as Corey 39. Corey, did we get you out of a gym session or?
Yeah, and got some nice traffic on the way back, so we are about 30 minutes behind our scheduled start time.
No,
I think that's what happened to the Penguins last night. Pretty sure.
Oh, shots fired. But well, the Steelers find themselves in a very familiar situation. Tomlin gets to keep on to that little notion about never have a losing season, so we get to hear that for eternity. I guess we're just stuck with it, guys. It's just never going to not happen at this point. But the situation I'm really referring to is the fact that the Steelers need to win to get in the playoffs. But that's not all, folks. We only need like help from like 3 to 4 other teams if we want to actually get in and get the 7th seed. And there's actually a scenario where they find a way to weasel themselves into the 6th seed, which I didn't realize was even possible. Until the other day, until a friend texted me about it. But just let's kind of recap here. I'll be honest, I did not think we were going to run that hard on Seattle. I think Will kind of alluded to the fact that I thought that the Steelers could run that much on Seattle. So Will, congratulations. You successfully predicted us completely destroying their ground defense.
I think I used the words worst run defense in the NFL, pretty sure, which is kind of looked like that. So
I mean, that's fair, but there's times where, the Steelers running game doesn't look that good. So I was, like averaging it out, okay, we'll have a good day, not a great day. No, we had a spectacular day. There's no other way to look at it. Najee with some great runs. God, I'll tell you this. I love the stiff arms from Najee and Warren. They're just comical at this point. How do you guys not know that these little arm tackles aren't going to work on these guys? It's funny. And one of the Seattle guys that I gave some praise for, Tariq Woolen. Good Lord, Tariq, you're supposed to be like this 225-pound corner. You got tossed like you were 190. So obviously the ground game worked. George Pickens looked pretty good when we got him the ball, which was actually a decent amount. If you were to have listened to this show up until like 2 weeks ago, you wouldn't have thought George Pickens was a part of this offense. So it's actually nice to see him get the ball. Deontay chipped in with a little bit here, but they're obviously using big play George. Defense, here and there, looked okay at times. But what are your guys' thoughts on this game? Corey, go for it.
Just ran straight through them. I mean, Seattle didn't really want to make the playoffs with a performance like that. I mean, I was fairly impressed by it. I know we're not going to run like that on, playoff.
Pretty much anybody else.
Yeah, but I mean, it was impressive, the level of like beat down that took place. So I mean, there's that. Mason played, good enough, better than Kenny has really for the most part. Where still pushing the ball downfield, getting the ball to Pickens, which seems to be all you have to do to get the pass offense going.
Right.
And it never had a losing season. That's the big takeaway from this game. It is officially clinched, and will probably earn Mike Tomlin a contract extension.
Yeah.
Yoy and double yoy. What I will say is you guys are too young to remember a 1970s beatdown, but in the era when there was this more disparity in talent levels with teams, especially defenses. This was the kind of thing that if you had superior talent, college football was the same way. If you were Nebraska or Oklahoma or Alabama in 1970, this is what you did to teams that didn't have as good a run defense. You could just plow through them, and almost everything you did on offense worked because you had this, you never going backwards. There was so few plays where the Steelers either lost yardage or weren't able to at least get 4 or 5 yards. So that makes everything easy. It makes you look smart on offense because everything you choose to do after that point more or less works. So I give them credit. I mean, you do that to any NFL team, you are doing something right. And to put up the points they did, where mainly they had this advantage in the run game, to parlay that into points is something that hasn't always happened with Mike Tomlin's Steelers. So congratulations to doing that. And I think a big part of it was that you at least you had a quarterback who was willing to push the ball downfield with some success. Still a lot of things that are very Steeler-like cropped up their head. The idea of running, out patterns at 12 yards on 3rd and 15, which they did multiple times in this game. And just, the quarterback has his flaws. It's just, he's played some, very porous passing defense against Cincinnati, and then a defense that was just pretty much overwhelmed last weekend. So kudos to him. That's what you're supposed to do when you play bad defenses. Will that continue? And can it be something that makes them worth thinking about as a contender to win in the playoffs and so on? That's a good question. I get the feeling that this week might be a tougher test even with backups against Baltimore. You can't rest everybody, first of all, and I think to a certain degree you don't even want to rest. If I'm the coach of Baltimore, I'm thinking I don't want to rest too many guys because they're going to have 3 weeks off between playing games, and sometimes that's too much. So it'll be a better test for the offense this week, which I'm sure we'll get to in a little while. But kudos to Mason Rudolph, kudos to the Steelers for making that work, and I'll even give Mike Tomlin a plug for if it was he apparently gave the impetus to throw the ball to Pickens late in that game where it was normally a situation where 99% of the time the Steelers are going to run the ball and eat clock. So I feel like that was the kind of move that helps you be a winner. And it's amazing how much more daredevil he becomes as a head coach, how much more aggressive he becomes when never had a losing season is on the line, right?
Yeah, because that's the standard. That's the standard anymore. So
yeah.
No, I mean you're very correct. Seattle, in a sense, is kind of in the same boat Pittsburgh is now. Not only do they have to win to get in, they need some help to get in. So they're in a similar spot.
I mean, fair enough, but to be fair, Jeremy, the Steelers don't need that much help. They basically need.
So I was going to run through the scenarios here.
Yeah, please hit it.
Because I made sure to save this tweet so I did not lose it. There's only 5 different scenarios for the Steelers to get in, so we'll run through them all very quickly. What are we sponsored by this week?
I was trying to get a good view. Sorry, well, you can say the Steelers playoff possibilities are sponsored by this IPA right here, which is called Madonna by Zero Gravity.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
and also Poland Spring Water, I think we're also sponsored by.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, and then Pepsi for those who feel young, right, or something like that.
Oh, you have like that big gulp from 7-Eleven that's like bigger than your head.
Yeah, I mean, I got that from an IU game, and they're great drinking cups, so it's like, why not keep it around? But so Steelers have 5 possibilities to get the 7th seed. The first one is, and I'm going to preface, well, actually, that's not true. I'm not going to preface that because it's not necessarily true. So a Pittsburgh win and an Indianapolis-Houston tie puts the Steelers in at 7. A Pittsburgh win and a Buffalo loss puts us right in at 7. There's nothing other than that. So if Buffalo loses to Miami, we're in if we win.
I thought we still needed we still needed Jacksonville losing that.
I hope this thing isn't too outdated, unless some things have changed. But well, I won't run through them then. This sounds like they might have been dated, but
you could be right, but let me go to something that's new, just to be sure here. Let's see.
So I think this was true as of 9/18 on Sunday. Could be wrong.
Yeah, we'll talk about the Steelers losing scenario because I think that hasn't changed.
Okay, yeah. So that's what I found the most interesting. So if Pittsburgh were to somehow tie, if Indianapolis and Houston do not tie, and Jacksonville loses, we're in a 7. Pittsburgh. Now here's the most interesting one, which Will's alluding to. Pittsburgh doesn't even necessarily have to win to be in the playoffs, which is mind-blowing when you think about it. So they could lose. Indianapolis and Houston do not tie. Jacksonville loses, but Denver wins. So that's the scenario, obviously, where the other 4 teams fighting for playoff spots all have to chip in and help. So let's not go that route because that's asking for a lot. I don't like that. It's already bad enough that we're not in on our own volition. Let's not count on too many other teams to do that. Well, because what was it last year where we were waiting to see the result of the Miami Jets game and somehow Miami ended up winning to keep us out? I think it was last year's scenario. But so those are the ones that don't involve a win. The other one that I saw that we are in is if we win in Jacksonville, either loses or ties, we're in. Those were the 5 overall scenarios that I had here. Unless they've changed, I apologize if I have outdated information. I thought this.
No, I think actually, well, I'm looking at it right now. It looks like if the Steelers win and either the Bills beat the Dolphins or the Jaguars beat or the Titans beat the Jaguars.
Yeah.
Sorry, got that backwards. The Dolphins or the Titans have to win. So they have 2 chances in the lottery. The Steelers win, either the Titans beat the Jaguars or the Dolphins beat the Bills. Now, here's the thing about that, though. We'll probably get to that when we pick these games, but the Dolphins are very beat up. They had at least 10 starters at one point out of the game, if I'm remembering correctly, this last game they played.
Yeah, well, not to mention Bradley Chubb going on IR in the last 2 minutes of week 17 where they were getting blown out 56-19.
Yeah, brilliant.
Coach.
Well, like I said, though, at some point, like you can't rest everybody. But yeah, Bradley Chubb would be somebody that might have been nice to do. And the Titans, I think, I don't know if you guys have seen, is Will Levis. He left the last week's game, so I think they don't even have their, the guy they consider to be their starter. But I suppose
I'm pretty sure Tannehill is starting.
Yeah, it feels like there's a better chance for the Titans maybe to beat the Jaguars, to me, because it's Derrick Henry's likely his last game in Tennessee.
Yeah, very, very much so. And so hence the shirt, gentlemen.
There you go.
Yep. So funny story behind this shirt. My buddy Wes is a big Titans fan, and we had a bet back in 2016 when the Titans owned that number 1 overall pick at the time. I told him there's no way the Titans are going to trade the number 1 overall pick. And he was like, I bet you they do. They just hired John Robinson, by the way, who doesn't have a job anymore. So you can tell how good he did. But but of course they traded out to pick 15. I lost the bet. Therefore, I have a Tennessee Titans football shirt. So, but I figure I'll wear it tonight on the show. Just, fingers crossed. They might be able to help us out. Who knows? But yeah, so obviously those 2 are the scenarios that are the most likely, not maybe the most likely, but the ones where we need the least amount of help. All we need is one of those teams to show up.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is that the Steelers losing, the only thing that really changes for them is, it then becomes like the same, the Titans beating the Jaguars or Miami beating the Bills and the Raiders beating the Broncos or Broncos beating the Raiders.
Yeah.
I know it's so confusing, but let's put it this way. It as it is always, usually it comes down to these scenarios with the Pittsburgh Steelers in the last week of the season. Them winning their game is probably the most, up in the air prospect of all of that. So
yeah, that's a good point to jump into our game as we have to get. The other thing, is we go to Baltimore too. So it's not like we get to play this game at home. We've already played our home game in this series. So Corey, I'm going to swing to you here. What's a matchup we need to watch out for? And, I'm going to preface this by saying, yes, obviously, the Ravens will be sitting some players. It's already been announced that Lamar is not going to play. It's going to be Tyler Huntley. And then I had one more thing pulled up here as far as a practice report. There were a litany of guys who did not practice today. So I think Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, lots of guys did not practice today. So they're already kind of in their bye week form, but on the notion that at least the stars will play for a little bit, what are some matchups we should watch out for?
Kyle Hamilton's the big one for me. That's the kind of guy that just creates a nightmare issue when you're looking at box numbers to run the ball, where, you can't really count him as a DB, even though he plays out there and covers like one. He's basically a linebacker in the box. So They already got Queens had a career year this year. Roquan's Roquan. So Ravens are kind of built at that second level to stop the run game. And, they're obviously tough up front. But I think Kyle Hamilton's kind of that game breaker where if you can't get Warren going outside, or if he's, not letting Najee get past that second level and kind of getting those 15-yard scampers, then, it's tough to win games as with how the Steelers play if you can't have any explosive runs.
Gotcha. And let me follow up really quickly because I found that thing of that list. So Odell Beckham Jr., Zay Flowers, Kyle Hamilton, Malik Harris, Darrell Worley, Marlon Humphrey, and Kevin Zeitler all did not practice today.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to blow your thing you just did, Corey, but I can't see Kyle Hamilton playing this game. I mean, the one thing you're going to count on is they're not going to play Lamar, and they're not going to play anybody who has the kind of injury that they aren't really recovered from, and this is an opportunity to give them 3 weeks rest. I feel like that's a no-brainer for Kyle Hamilton. He had an injury that they thought was going to be a season-ending injury, and then he had he had 2 injuries, one of which was supposed to be season-ending, and then this last week he aggravated one of those 2 injuries again. So I just feels like that's not happening. For me, I guess what I would say is the last time the Steelers needed to win and they played the Ravens backups, they of course lost. I think they played the 3rd string Baltimore quarterback on that day. And the thing about a game like that is I'm reminded of like the Willie Parker's first start against Buffalo in one of these games where the Steelers were resting everybody. So to me, the matchups to really watch out for are the guys that don't normally play for Baltimore that are going to want to come in and make a name for themselves. Like this is an opportunity for those guys who may never, get an opportunity the rest of the postseason to show that they're valuable and that they should be getting reps, right? So I think about Daniel Filet on the offensive line. I think about Tylan Wallace, the wide receiver from Oklahoma State. I think about Trenton Simpson, who hasn't played a whole lot for them at linebacker. And the one that intrigues me a lot actually is Tavius Robinson, the edge rusher that I like coming out of Mississippi. That's the right guy, right? Tavius Robinson, Mississippi.
Mississippi State, maybe?
No, it is Mississippi. Yeah,
okay.
He's that kind of tall, long pass rusher that I felt was a little bit on the raw side, but as a guy that just go after the passer. So like I feel like the danger in this game, like I said, is that you're going to play, even though they don't need to win this game, you're going to play a bunch of hungry guys who have been playing on a good team and are fighting for their space on a good team. And that to me is the kind of matchups to watch out for. Are just guys that don't ordinarily get an opportunity, but those guys I listed are studs, man. They're just on other teams. Trey Swilling, the cornerback, Mike is a guy that might get called up. Like these are guys that can play. Maybe Trey Swilling. Maybe we'll get the long-awaited Trey Swilling versus George Pickens rematch. They're the guys that had the fight. Do you remember in college?
Mm-hmm.
They had a big fight in the Georgia State game. So yeah, maybe we'll get one of those for old time's sake.
Oh, that'd be funny. Worth noting real quick, everyone for Pittsburgh practiced today other than Najee. Just limited practice yesterday, did not practice today. He's been doing this all year long almost. Kind of he's nursing that knee injury. He's playing through it a little bit, but hard to believe he had a knee injury based on what we saw this past Saturday. But
also because he never really bends his knees, so it's amazing. I mean, he played great, but it's a weird thing. He doesn't really get any kind of like forward lean, and the defenders trying to tackle him never try to go low. And just like the guy, when they go low, he flips right over and it falls right down on the ground. But guys are really afraid to go low on him, so you end up with this
the hurdles.
What's that?
Because he's got so many hurdles throughout his career.
Yeah, I suppose. There you go. One thing that the hurdles are good for. Jeremy, you went this far. I'm gonna throw it to you, man. You went this far without mentioning the elephant in the room. The Kenny Pickett story that won't die. It won't die. Did Kenny Pickett? Well, first of all, the rumor was he was cleared last week. They told him he would be the number 2, and he balked at that. And so they said, you're going to be the number 3 and not dress. And then he came out and vehemently denied that. But I know today now is the people who are do reporting for the team, like Cavoli, who I think is at the moment, he would be maybe the number one source for Steelers news. And he said today that he thinks Kenny Pickett was just out and out lying or parsing his words in such a way to like make himself look better, but that he really was unhappy about not being named the starter last week, and that there is some fire to this. I don't know. I'm going to throw it to you, Jeremy. We don't know everything, but like, what do you think is going on here, and what are the ramifications?
I mean, I'm with you. Where there's smoke, there's possibly fire. So I mean, how much of it is true is always a degree of, here and there. But I mean, I definitely think, Pickett thought, I'm healthy. I'm this franchise's future at quarterback. It's, it's my team. I should be playing. I 100% believe he thought that. I don't believe this narrative that it's like, oh, they didn't clear him till like late Thursday or something where he didn't have the practice reps, that all of a sudden he was the 3 instead of the 2 or something. So I do think there's a little bit there. But I mean, I don't know how you can sit Mason at this point. He's the first quarterback that's almost thrown for 300 yards. He put up 290. I think the closest Pickett's been to that all year was, his game against Cincinnati where he threw for like 240 or something. But the other thing is the offense looked explosive with Mason 2 weeks in a row now too. So it's just like, I don't understand why he thinks he's entitled just to get back and play right away when he really hasn't been playing. He's been playing mistake-free football, but he hasn't been playing a ton of winning football, if you ask me. So I definitely think there is something to it. I don't know if we're going to ever really know the full story, but I definitely think there's something to it. He feels like this is his team. I'm the leader. And then he's been put, he's the elf on the shelf through the holidays. So,
I mean, I think that the way we'll find out is what happens next in the saga. But Corey, you have a chance to weigh in before I say what I'm going to say.
Yeah, I'm with Jeremy. Where there's smoke, there's fire. There's something there. We're not going to be told what, but I mean, I'm cool with this move if they're just out on Kenny. If we either trade or we draft a guy, what I don't want is, we don't bring back Mason. Kenny, we go to the let's say we don't make the playoffs. This all changes if we make the playoffs, but if we don't make the playoffs, which is statistically more likely we don't than we do, then I don't want this to come out, cut ties with Mason, and then with Kenny, we say, we still believe in Kenny. Kenny's the guy. Don't make any serious steps in addressing the quarterback situation. And then we just punt another contention year with TJ Watt and Cam Hayward. And, that's the outcome I don't want. We say, we believe in the new OC. We believe in Kenny, all this, yada, yada. I would have preferred if Kenny was healthy, he played, regardless of the win or not. I mean, we can pretend like we might do something in the playoffs, but, we're all realists here. So I'm just hoping that if we do make playoffs, that'll mark the end of the Kenny saga or saga, however you want to pronounce it. And, if we don't make the playoffs, then we don't just, act like it was all injury still.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I saw an idea floated today that it was the coaching staff lied to Kenny in an effort to make him feel better. They were like, oh, we just don't think you're healthy enough. So we're gonna start Mason, but the reality was like, yeah, well, that doesn't say that we not necessarily we would start you if you were healthy, but we're gonna play that health card. I kind of alluded to that last week's show. I'm like, they have a cover for not putting him back in the game as long as he's coming off injury. But now this week, I mean, here's the thing: it's a do or die game to go to the playoffs, and Kenny Pickett's on the bench. It doesn't matter why he's healthy and he's the number 2. They cannot possibly go back to next year with him being in any better position than competing to be the starting quarterback. That would be for him the best case scenario. The worst case scenario being that they draft a guy or that they bring someone else in or that they have him quote unquote compete and then trade him at the end of camp or something like that. So I just feel like if you're playing a do or die game and your supposed franchise quarterback is not starting and you don't have a better reason other than the other guy's better right now, gives us a better chance to win, then what are you saying?
Like you're the franchise QB.
Yeah, I mean, you can't have it both ways. You can't go out there and talk about how Kenny's your guy, and then the first moment that you need, a win, that you don't want to have him in the game. It's like, come on, especially over a guy that you barely wanted to have on the team.
No one
So
wanted him on their team. No one wanted Mason based off of his body of work, and then he's coming out the victor in the late season playoff hunt QB battle.
I mean, this week would definitely tell a tale. But if, like, let's say Mason Rudolph uh, performs pretty well this week, but the Steelers don't win, is he not going to get offered a contract? He's a free agent. He's going to get offered a contract next year that's at least what Mitch Trubisky is making, isn't he? Or close to that.
He's not going to take it from the Steelers. He didn't want to be here.
No, he wants to be someplace where he's got a legit. They're saying, well, at the moment you're the starter, so come on. Like that we'll give you a guarantee that you get the first shot at starting. Even if you got that much, he'd go there, right? So I think he's earned himself some money already, because the excuses are already to be made. If he goes into Baltimore and the offense doesn't play well, Baltimore's defense is really good. Even though they were resting guys, they're still great. And it was a tough environment going into Baltimore. Nobody expects you to be great there. So I suspect that he's going to get himself a good contract. And unless Pittsburgh is committed to moving forward with him, literally committing to him, is that, the signing a 5-year contract or something and being their guy, which I can't imagine that they would do, then I think he's going to get a big contract and be gone. There's no way he's going to come back as the number 2. At this stage of his career, it's like he's either going to be a starter somewhere and get that shot, or else he's going to, limp away somewhere else.
I mean, you don't think, I mean, that he could also just this could also be the game where it just sets him up to be just a good backup for the next 8 years too, though. Because I mean, even if you're a number 3 on a team, you're still making a ton of freaking money, because he's an NFL veteran now. This is what, year 6 or 7 for him. So It's not like he's, making, vet minimum out there. I mean, I don't know what it is for a vet minimum for a 7-year guy, because next year it'd be a 7 years out of minimum, I think, maybe 6. I don't remember. But I mean, he's making over $1 million sitting on the bench as a 3rd string quarterback. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, personally, I wouldn't mind seeing him in Pittsburgh, but like you said, he doesn't want to be here. So
I mean, saying I would love to have him as your. I'd even take him as a. Like,
I think he's there too.
I think he's going to revert, to his. Maybe he's better. He looks he's worked a little bit on his footwork in the pocket. He's still showing some of the same problems of, like, he gets on his tippy toes and gets up close to the rushing lineman, and then, like, arm throws it without using his lower half, which is one of those things that got him into trouble when he was starting previously. So I don't think it's like all Mason's a new guy now. So I do expect him to, like, revert a little bit back, but I would take him as a bridge quarterback. Like, if you're drafting somebody who isn't 100% ready to play the first day of training camp, then I would have him as a bridge quarterback. There are probably better guys to have, but if your best option is to have Mason Rudolph as your bridge quarterback and number 2 eventually, that works okay for me.
Well, I mean, and this next draft class kind of leans toward that too. You've got a bunch of quarterbacks that probably are not going to go round 1, but probably a slew that could go in round 2.
If you build it, they will come. If you keep saying his name enough, maybe he'll come.
Right. But what I mean? It's like there's 3, first round quarterbacks that everyone's talking about right now. It's Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels. And obviously someone's got to like Daniels to go, depend on how high he goes. But Williams and May are going top 4, top 3, top 2, top 1. Depends on how those teams view those guys, obviously. But you may be looking at, one other quarterback that, probably goes top 10, probably 13-ish or whatever. If we win and somehow get into the playoffs, we are past pick 20 again. So it's going to take a lot to trade up and get one of those guys. But in round 2, who could still be sitting there? You talk about Michael Penix, talk about not Brock Bowers. Thinking Bo Nix. I don't know why.
Bo Nix, yeah.
Yeah, Bo Nix.
I wish Brock Bowers played quarterback. That would be a plus.
Yeah, right.
Add to his resume.
But we start to talk about those quarterbacks that could be options in round 2, where you're thinking, well, maybe you bring Mason back, tell Kenny he's got to fight with Mason, and then, you draft a guy who you think can develop to be your future. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, I do want to say this because I told Will about it, and I think it's something that the Steelers front office is going to value a ton. And I'm going to say this multiple times over the next couple months. But this Michigan game is ginormous for Michael Penix because Jesse Minter is pulled straight from Mike McDonald's staff at Baltimore. Jesse Minter runs the same exact stuff, carbon copy, same rules, same alignment, same every single thing about the Michigan defense is the Baltimore defense. Those are two of the hottest names in football right now. Even offense, defensive coordinators, Mike McDonald, Jesse Minter. So, what do you guys think is going to happen if the Steelers see Michael Penix Jr. come out and raise the Michigan defense, where it is a carbon copy of a defense they see twice a year that is about to be a big trend in the NFL? That doesn't sound like a guy they would wait on in the first round.
That's also a fair point. That's another fair point, Corey. You know, my only hesitancy is, you know, the last time we picked a quarterback, say around 20ish, he hasn't exactly worked out. But
that's a guy that should have been drafted. You know, like Jake Browning was undrafted. You can't make an argument, especially now that you've seen him in the NFL, that Jake Browning deserved to be undrafted and Kenny Pickett a first rounder. They theoretically both should have been mid-rounders. So it's like the fact that Pickett was overdrafted, you can't hold against drafting another quarterback there.
I was joking,
and I know you were, but people often say this, like, well, we already spent a first-round pick. You can't look at finding a quarterback that way. You basically have to pick a guy, take a chance on the guy you think is the right guy. If he isn't the right guy and you can't develop him, then you pick another guy. And if that doesn't work, you pick another guy, and so on. You can't give up on it until it doesn't matter how much investment you've made, you can't give up until you find the guy. It's just like that's the only choice that you have, other than to be, you know, mediocre, be satisfied with it, right? I think Michael Penix has played his way out of anything other than being a first rounder, unless he completely falls to pieces against Michigan. And that's the fact that there are so many issues with Michael Penix. You know, there's just one team. There'll be a team that takes him in round one, whether I would or not, because they need a quarterback, and they see a guy tossing the ball around, and they're willing to overlook the fact that, you know, what does he have, like two, you know, of the top 10 wide receivers in college football. He's got actually an amazing the tight end they have that was a walk-on. That dude's great.
Westover. Yeah,
the very good O-line, multiple NFL guys on that.
And that system works great in college football, spreading the field and so on. That's something that he probably won't encounter whenever he's playing pro football, and they'll ignore his, you know, injury history, his age, the fact that he was a turnover machine in the early part of his career, and that he didn't really do anything until year 5. Like, yeah, that stuff is, you're willing to you don't see any of that if you're just quarterback desperate and you see this guy available on the board, because, you know, he has tools. You could see from the time he was at Indiana. Did he start as a sophomore or freshman? He started.
I mean, he started as a true freshman.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I saw
him. He platooned because of his injuries. You know,
I remember. Yeah,
but I saw him. He had 2 season-ending ACL surgeries. Yeah, there's been other years where he hasn't finished due to other injuries. But you're absolutely right. You know, we saw flashes of what we thought he could be at Indiana. He didn't really start everything click, because the funny thing is that they made a comment about this in the playoff game or whatever, how he sees the field so well. That shit definitely didn't happen at IU.
But he's paired with a great coach and a great system, right? Yeah. I mean, this is the guy that made Jake Haener into an NFL prospect, right? And I think Michael Penix is a lot more talented than Jake Haener. So I feel like he fell into a really good situation there, and he also got better. He's allowed to get better. Good for him. But despite all that, and, you know, the fact that a more reasonable assessment might be that he's a second-round pick, there's probably a team that, you know, the way the quarterback situation is, there's a team out there that's like, he fits what we do. I've been saying for a while now that I think it's New England, because I think they don't mind having a guy that's a pocket guy. That they, you know, they're one of the few teams that isn't looking at, like, I want a guy with a lot of mobility who can evade the pass rush and extend the play, because that's not him at all. He does, you know, well, he showed a little of it.
And I'll say because I've watched multiple Washington games, what he showed in that playoff game, he hasn't put on tape all season.
That's true.
He hasn't put that mobility on tape all season.
He ran. He was good running. but his throws on the move, like when he evaded the pass rush and rolled out and threw the ball, he's inaccurate with that. That's been a thing for him always. Now, some guys just are great at that, and some guys are not. He's almost a guy that needs to reset when he gets outside the pocket, but that's that. Anyway, I'm sorry I was stepping on you. Go ahead, Corey.
Oh, no, you're good. It's kind of what it reminded me of, and I'll get more into what I like and don't like about him as a prospect when we get closer to the draft, since we're going to be talking QBs. But just the performance reminded me a lot of the CJ Stroud game against Georgia last year, where it seems like the coaches had shackles on him in terms of running, in terms of like mobility, because we knew Penix could do a pre-injury. At this point, watching him this year, is in my scouting report, and I really didn't like him because he didn't move at all. I was like, this guy just doesn't move at all. He just takes shots in the pockets. He doesn't move. So then when I saw him, evading interior D linemen, stepping up and throwing, I'm like, that was shocking. Like I was shocked. I was sitting next to my girlfriend the whole time. I'm like, this guy did not do this entire year. Like I was telling her.
Did it. He did it in Indiana. So
he did it in Indiana, but
yeah.
I assume the injuries had just kind of taken that away. So, Stroud was younger. Stroud didn't have the injuries. Stroud did it against a higher level defense. But in terms of how, it kind of reshaped because I didn't take that Stroud game into enough. I didn't factor it in enough. I just didn't. I watched the tackles every game. I saw every snap of Stroud the whole year. I'm like, this is one game. Granted, it was against Georgia. It's one game. But I don't really want to make that mistake again where I'm like, this guy shows he can do it. I probably need to move him up a little because it looks like they just kind of shackled him a little.
Right. So, Jeremy, I point to this Exhibit A into why there'll be some team that takes him in the first round, because they just went through this with CJ Stroud. Like, does it mean something that the guy's last couple of games of his career were amazing or better than what he showed before? Well, he's supposed to get better. All right. Well, then we can take him. Anyway, none of it matters if they have the same. If you have a coaching staff in place that doesn't develop anything, is a horrible place for a quarterback to land. None of that matters, but for us.
And I'll let Jeremy go in a second, but it's not even necessarily that it's like he got better, like from that game, from what he'd been doing, because he's made the bomb shots all year. Everyone knows he can throw deep. Everyone knows that. I truly didn't think he still had the evasion and the running ability still in him. So for him to show that he did, I was like, they must have just been holding him back. Jeremy, I'll let you go.
By the way, I'll let Jeremy go in a second. I just want to say, Odunze.
Oh, yeah.
He makes a deep throw look better, right? Like Mike Wallace. If you remember this, Mike Wallace with the Steelers. Mike Wallace made every deep ball an adventure because he had no tracking skills of the deep ball. So if you hit him in his general vicinity, in his limited catch radius, without him having to leave the ground, he's so much speed, he'd be so open that it would work.
And just quickly before I let Jeremy go, I know he's had something to say. I think Odunze is a Jamar Chase level prospect. That's from what I went back, I watched him after that game. He's that good.
I'm just saying he makes that deep ball look completely on target when it's not, because his ability to adjust the ball in the air and catch it over his shoulder makes it look easy. Go ahead.
Okay, Jeremy.
Yeah, last damn time I let Corey go ahead of me, because you stole my thunder a little bit with comparing that to the CJ Stroud game against Georgia. As soon as you said it, I was just like, son of a bitch, I let him go first. Because honestly, that I had a similar reaction to what you had as well, because early in the game there was a pressure off, I think it was the left side. You see him clearly the pressure's coming from the right. I think actually he clearly makes a great move to stay in the pocket, keep his eyes down the field, and make the throw to the tight end. And it's like, wow, that's pro level pocket movement that you, like you said, you hadn't necessarily.
He took shots. He took shots to the chest all year on that exact kind of pressure where if someone got beat inside, he would just turn, throw, and then just eat it. I mean, he took nails to the chest throughout the year.
Yeah, but so I had the exact same kind of response as you, as that game alone, and I only said second rounder just as a possibility, but I definitely agree with you guys. Someone will take this kid in the first round because, you listen to him talk too. He's humble. He's a leader. He's everything you want your organization to have. And on top of that, he's a pretty dang good prospect in his own right. Is he elite in a bunch of categories? No, but he's pretty good in a bunch of categories. So,
But I think in a fair world, he's not that different a prospect from Bo Nix. I mean, that's the thing. It's like
But
you
here's my thing is that and I'm glad we brought that up because I wanted to ask you guys about that. It's gonna be, we said those first three quarterbacks are gonna be gone. Me and Will love Cam Ward more than other guys that are gonna go before him. I almost need to exclude Cam Ward from our draft conversations just because I would take him in the top 5. So that's just straight up. I take Cam Ward in the top 5. So I would take him over anyone we're going to talk about after. But when we're looking at Bo Nix or Michael Penix, my question is, who's more likely to end up being a guy who can step up and win a playoff game for you? And, I'm going to say Penix, especially after watching that game. Bo Nix reminds me a lot of a quarterback that is already on the roster.
Yeah.
And he has a lot of the same traits that the quarterback already on the roster has. I would almost just rather go for the guy who has a hose, who can make throws against tight windows, has a little bit more poise than, we've seen basically what Bo Nix is going to look like with Mike Tomlin. I mean, he might be better than Kenny, but, if Kenny was notably better, how much more does that take the team? I mean, how much more does that get?
I would say, but I'd say Michael Penix is not that different from Mason Rudolph. He's just, maybe he's got a better arm. He's got more ball velocity, and maybe a little more accurate downfield. But I don't know that they're really that much different players.
Mason Rudolph as a prospect was known as a gunslinger who hung in the pocket. I think a difference is Penix, I think, targets the middle of the field a bit more than Rudolph did. Rudolph threw probably 15 go balls to James Washington on the outside every single game.
No, I mean, I understand as a prospect. I mean, in terms of what he's done, like look at Mason Rudolph the last 2 weeks. And I think you probably have a pretty good idea what Michael Penix would look like against Cincinnati and Seattle. That's what I'm trying to say. It's a similar kind of a
yeah, I mean, the other thing you do for these any quarterback you bring in, obviously you have to protect him. Right now, if you put Penix behind this offensive line, the kid's career might be done in 3 weeks. Sometimes our pass protection is just so poor at times. So we need a quarterback, but if we're going to draft a guy, we need to make sure we can keep him upright. Like you said, Will, like we've said multiple times on here, if you go to a situation which sucks, it doesn't matter how good you are. If they program you to do the minimal stuff with minimal weapons, with minimal protection,
Sam Howell, excuse me.
You are not going to advance as a player in the NFL. So your situation determines everything. So again, so much of what Pittsburgh trots out next year depends on what happens this offseason. Clean slate.
I mean, to that point, I don't even consider drafting a quarterback to Pittsburgh who, unless one of two things: either that quarterback is what I would call a transcendent talent, meaning they can transcend the scheme and what style of football you want to play and who the head coach is and who the offensive coordinator is. Patrick Mahomes, right? Ben Roethlisberger. If you don't see the guy as being that guy, then the only reason to draft a quarterback is if you have a new head coach. Like if you're starting over and you're going to have at least a better offensive situation for somebody to come in and you might actually be able to develop a guy, then that opens the possibilities. But like this conversation we're having is silly because we know what a quarterback like Bo Nix or probably even Michael Penix looks like on the Pittsburgh Steelers. In fact, I got a pretty good idea what Caleb Williams would look like on the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it's not pretty. So if they don't change, then this conversation is moot, basically.
Well, and I want to add one thing. If I'm going to assume that the offseason plan is to move Broderick back to left tackle because I would hope we've learned at this point to stop putting guys out of their natural position. This deep in the season, probably too late to change it, right? But I would imagine we are planning on putting Broderick back at left tackle, and so if you want a right tackle, we've seen what our free agent signings do. That's the one thing with an offensive lineman. If they've hit free agency, there's a reason. There's always a reason.
Yeah.
So you got to draft one. There are 2 notable right tackle prospects, J.C. Latham and Talai East Fuaga. You're not getting Fashanu or Alt, so you're looking at those two. Well, if you want a quarterback, and we've been talking about Penix. If you want Penix, you're not getting him and a right tackle. You're just not. So
unless
if you want to
trade back up,
which is fair, which I wouldn't put it past Khan doing.
Well, what are you getting for Kenny Pickett at this point?
Not a first.
No, but are you going to get enough draft capital to move up in round 2?
Can we trade?
I mean, I'm just going to ask, what team would trade for Kenny? I mean, you'd be trading for a backup, essentially. No team's going to trade for him as a starter with what he's put on film. They're not. I mean, the Steelers have started him for, we say, far too long.
Somebody gave a big contract to Mitch Trubisky after what he did in Chicago. It's like how if I'm Kenny Pickett's agent, I can make a case that, well, he had a horrible offensive coordinator, and they told him not to throw in the middle of the field, and it's like if he goes to a different scenario, he might.
Well, Kenny's Pickett agent can make that argument. Omar Khan has to convince a team that he is better than.
Hey man, they got a first for Chase Claypool. I mean, come on.
So who's a random backup quarterback? I mean, Gardner Minshew.
Who was Atlanta? Did you say?
Who's a random backup quarterback?
Oh yeah, Gardner Minshew.
Really random.
No, Gardner Minshew is like top 5 backup quarterbacks.
Does anyone know who Kenny Pickett's friends with in the NFL? Maybe he could be a backup for a good quarterback, as long as he's friends with them.
Aaron Donald. So maybe the Rams.
Yeah.
Somebody, Minnesota. Is it Minnesota? Who is it that has? Yeah, Minnesota has Sean Clifford as their backup quarterback. So, yeah, there's probably a place for Kenny.
Is he religious, not like Cousins?
Oh my God, doubtful. Oh, we've derailed the podcast totally, Jeremy. Sorry.
I was about to say, believe it or not, we were on the matchups the last time I checked. So I'll say this right now, that just kind of bringing this back to Baltimore coming up here this week. Isaiah Likely is going to be an absolute nightmare if Minka can't suit up. But we don't have anyone that can cover the wide receiver that plays tight end for the Baltimore Ravens. Dude is uncoverable, honestly, as a tight end. He is way too fluid, way too fast.
You say he's way too fast. You know that the knock on him coming out was the slow 40 that he ran. And it's like
he didn't play at that 40 though.
Hell, not at Coastal Carolina. He was just like doing exactly what he's doing now. Yeah. And he was their go-to guy there, where like everybody knew that he was going to get the ball anyway.
Will, this would be a good thing to look back on, because I know you talk about the Ravens game speeds all the time, but I would be willing to bet Isaiah Likely had a pretty damn good in-game speed, and that would be why a team like the Ravens jumped on him with a slow 40.
Yeah. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm gonna say probably.
But yeah, so
the Ravens are really into the. I'm sorry, Jeremy, just because you were out of the loop. The Ravens are apparently really into the in-game RFID tracking.
Oh, okay.
They're more likely to to draft. A lot of the guys they draft are guys that were leaders in those categories.
Zay Flowers was one I remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, but I was the big Zay Flowers guy. I remember that he didn't time super fast.
Did he run? I don't even remember him running, to be honest.
Honestly, now that you say that, I don't think he did run. Just because I think he was going to disappoint in that category. But I mean, you look at a guy like Zay Flowers, he's super quick, knows what he's doing. That makes up for
he ran, guys. He ran a 4.42 electronic. At the
combine. That's better than I thought.
Which that's a knock for a guy at his weight.
I know, it's ridiculous. You asked me. That's ridiculous. Oh, he didn't run in the 4.3s, so he can't. I don't
think like the difference in like a 4.6 and a 4.3 can be made up with technique as a cornerback. Like it's.
But come on, he ran the 10-yard in 1.49. That shows you what he really is.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Anyway,
1.49.
Yeah, that's silly.
But I mean, honestly, I'm talking about Likely, Flowers in that same regard, because they use them in the slot a lot. Both of those guys could just tear the middle of our defense apart, and we have seen that over these past several weeks. We don't have a clue on how to cover guys in the middle of the field. We are always running to them, and I hate to say it, but with Miles Jack back, we're definitely running to guys once they've caught the ball.
Our defense looks like it was put together in an expansion draft. Like,
Ouch.
Very
Ouch.
true.
But any other matchups, guys, we should be on the lookout for this week.
I would say
know
the
matchups
injured
matter.
Pittsburgh Steelers. So I'll call Minka Fitzpatrick and Landon Roberts. Like how close to 100% they are. That's the thing I would like to see.
Both
I mean,
live practices today.
yeah, without knowing they was limited practice for both. So
Limited. Yep.
yeah, what that really means for, I'm sure they're practicing because it's a must-win game. My guess is if this game didn't mean anything, they'd be shut down for the season, right? So
Yeah.
it's like I want to see how those guys perform doing the stuff that they're supposed to do, especially against the run game of the Ravens. Because I would imagine being a game where they don't need to win and they don't want to risk as much, they're going to try to run the hell out of the ball. They're going to try to do the Steelers what the Steelers did to the Seahawks last week.
Yeah, I mean, this is a week for Justice Hill to kind of put his name in the ring for a long-term starting running back. I know that's not a phrase Baltimore likes to preach by with that organization. They always have like 9 on their roster, but they always have a slew of them. But with Keaton Mitchell coming off, an ACL so late, he won't be ready for next year. It'd be very unlikely. Gus Edwards seems to be their steady big line back, but I mean, other than that, Dobbins is going to move on. I can't see how the Ravens commit anything to him after 2 big injuries that have sidelined him the last 2 years. But I mean, Hill has looked very good the last few games. He had a monster game against Miami. They couldn't cover him. So that's another guy, who makes our middle defenders just, makes me cringe thinking we have to go cover him too. So,
people were pissed about it at the time. Chase Claypool did in fact end up being a much better pick than J.K. Dobbins. You remember that whole big scam?
That's fair. I do remember that argument.
Yeah. But listen, the Ravens the Ravens are so deep at running back, it's sick. They have Melvin Gordon as their number 3, first of all.
Wow.
And secondly, they have Jake Funk as their practice squad 4th guy. He may be elevated this week. And I don't know if you guys followed his career very much, but he's one of those like super athlete guys. He was when he got snaps for the Rams, he actually played very well for them. So he's a classic, like a third down back. He'd be like their Justice Hill backup.
Being in Big Ten country, unfortunately, I saw Jake Funk run way to like have bigger days against that Hoosier defense that I don't really want to remember.
Exactly. So I mean, that's a position where they're definitely loaded, as they are at linebacker. Like in a way, they're loaded at positions that the Steelers are really. I mean, it's running back these days. The Steelers are pretty good, but like their linebacker depth and their front, their defensive line depth is pretty admirable. Where the Ravens are weak is as it relates to this matchup. If you're going to rest the top guys, like if Marlon Humphrey's not going to play, cornerback's an issue for them. So it could be another. That would be a place to think about attacking versus the typical Tomlin-led Steelers Ravens game of wanting to try to show their toughness by running the football against the Ravens.
We say that about the Ravens, but I can't tell you why, but I always remember us taking a lot of shots against the Ravens. Like I feel like Marlon Humphrey's always involved in a couple deep balls a game. So
shots, but they take that like outside.
Yeah,
that's low risk. But it's really like this. They play like the old school Raiders football. It's run, and then a deep shot.
Play action go.
So it's like I just think if you look at what they did against Seattle and you think to yourself, great, we can run the football better than anybody. We're going to run it against the Ravens. That seems like a formula to lose this game, which I don't know. I just feel like they're already a little bit banged up at corner, and if they sit guys on top of that, then I could see that being, I'd be licking my chops a little bit.
Mm-hmm. But
we'll get there. We'll get to this part of the conversation.
Yeah, so it'll be kind of interesting, obviously, to see who, because honestly, the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to do what those 2005, 2006 Colts did, where they tried to rest guys for 3 straight weeks. And, I don't know, they came out flat against that team that is a 6 seed that ended up winning it all that year. Oh, that's right. That was your Pittsburgh Steelers. So, tale of caution there. Don't have them sit for too long, or else they can almost look too rusty to a point where someone can come in and really surprise you. So it wouldn't surprise me if you go out there and see the starters for even a quarter, just so they log some snaps so they don't look so rusty since they're going to have the 2 weeks off. You don't want to have that 3 weeks off and not be ready for your next opponent. Even as the 1 seed, you get that low seed. But I mean, we've seen that a few times in the playoffs. All it takes is a hot low team seed to come in and all of a sudden derail your plans. So,
well, one thing I wonder is, maybe not like the Steelers, because we haven't had to think about a 1 seed, but like maybe a organization that's a bit more progressive that has been around the 1 seed a lot. I'm sure someone's done research in the league where figuring out, is there any actual evidence that sitting guys is like it successfully reduces the injury, or successfully, like, the teams that rest more guys for longer lose games, or they actually win the games. I'm sure someone in the league has done that research, like maybe someone at the Eagles or something like that. But that'd be something that I'm curious to see an article on somewhere.
I mean, am I right? It was the two number 1 seeds in the Super Bowl last year, was it not?
Right.
Yes, I think so.
I mean, this format with the only one team gets a bye, I think is definitely makes it more likely. It makes it easier for them for sure, and probably part of that is this idea that you're going to be very healthy your first week against a team that just played a playoff game.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like I'm torn on it. I do think some guys, I bet you it's an individual player kind of decision. Some players need to play every week, and some players are perfectly fine, like waking up out of bed and like falling onto the field and playing. So,
well, yeah, I'll say this is like my playing career is done now, but like I hated the bye weeks, and I granted I wasn't in like a super physical position. I was a long snapper, but I wonder if it's the same for like corners or like, positions that don't see receivers, who don't see a lot of like super physical action, but like it's nice for them to be in a, just a repetitive kind of state.
Yeah, things that are technique oriented in general in life, not just football. It's better that if you keep doing it. It's hard to to really rep that as much in practice. So yeah, I feel like it's a price that you pay for the rest, and there's a price that you pay for the rest, guys, and some players probably deal better with that than others. And I mean, I think it's like, resting Lamar Jackson is sort of a no-brainer. You don't really want to. There's a big drop off from Lamar Jackson to the next guy, but it wouldn't surprise me to see all of their running backs dress like, unless somebody's injured and we don't know about it. There's not really a point in sitting running backs when they're the kind of system that can plug in like the 4th guy. They'd be all right with Justice Hill and Jake Funk as their running backs. Like they'd still be pretty contention, they'd still be in contention. So I think it's a case by case basis. Maybe a guy like Isaiah Likely doesn't play very much, because I'm not really sure they have the tight ends now. The tight end depth is really there. So,
well, and it's, this could be anecdotal, but tight ends are one of those positions where like they're always banged up at the end of the season. So like we get every year, our tight ends would be just like clawing through practice just to get to the games at the end of the year, just because, you're a smaller guy in the trenches. I mean, that's kind of the position.
Yeah, tough position for sure.
But let's shift our focus here. Let's pick some games here. As far as the seeding goes, on the AFC side, the Baltimore Ravens are locked into the 1. The 49ers are locked into the 1 on the NFC side. The Chiefs are locked into the 3 with the win over this past weekend. The Browns.
So we don't want the 6.
5. Huh?
So we don't want the 6 seed.
No.
Although, I mean, you can make an argument. I mean, right now, I would say that Miami and maybe the Chiefs. I mean, I know they have Patrick Mahomes, but neither of those teams is in particularly good shape right now. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we all expect Kansas City to like pull it together for the playoffs. But I would say if they're ever going to be vulnerable, this year's the year. So yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not as like, I would be less shocked about going to Kansas City and winning this year than I would have been last year or the year before.
So it's a fight for the 2 seed between the Dolphins and
the Bills. I was about to say, so the Dolphins have a playoff team locked out of the playoff.
Yeah, the Bills could be out or be the 3 seed, I think. Actually, you said Kansas City's locked into the 3?
They are locked into the 3. It's between the 2 and the 6 for them, for the Dolphins. And so
that's what I mean. So they could the Dolphins right now have
But-
at least the 3. They might get the 2. Is that what you're saying?
No, so they have the 2 right now. They could fall all the way to 6.
Oh, the Dolphins could, right? Okay,
Yeah.
now I understand. So you said they're locked in. That made me feel like there's no hope of them.
No, sorry, locked into the playoffs. They've locked in their playoff berth. So
Right.
there are, 5 teams fighting for the playoffs on the AFC side. That's the Bills, the Jaguars, the Colts, the Houston Texans, and of course your Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, we've already kind of been over the scenarios for us.
One of the Colts and Texans will make it, and one will be out. Right, that's as simple as that. Okay.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So this is it's the sort of like, are the Jaguars completely faded? That's
Kind of look like it.
And is Miami too beat up to like be able to compete with Buffalo? Like that's really the big questions this week.
So if Jacksonville wins, they are in. They win the South. It's that simple for Jacksonville. Winning in.
Do they have a shot at the 2?
No, they do. I don't think they do.
I don't think so. I think they're a win behind. Yeah, they're at 9 wins right now. So
so they're okay.
Because if Buffalo wins, they win the AFC East after the long road they've taken to get there. But they jump all the way up to 2 if they win in Miami, which is insane when you think about how the year started out.
I'm going to be honest. If the Steelers make the 7 and the Bills make the 2, that's probably one of the more favorable matchups.
That's what I'm saying. But Miami's completely beat up, and the Chiefs are completely dysfunctional on offense right now. So
it's kind of like, would you rather play a team you've recently historically played well, or would you rather face a team that's beat up but has Tyreek Hill?
Well, you're right, because back in the day it was the Patriots. It's like that no matter how bad the Patriots were, if the Steelers matched up with them in the playoffs, they were dead, and you knew it, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I believe that. I mean, I think the Ravens and the Browns are the teams that you want to avoid for as long as possible.
I disagree. I would rather play an AFC North team because outside of that Bengals slaughter, that seems to be the teams that we always play the best against. Like the Browns slaughter
in the regular season, but not in the playoffs.
We're talking sample size here now. Like historically, we've beaten the Ravens pretty much in the playoffs.
It was tough. Those Ravens games were like,
we also had Ben Roethlisberger, and again, we're saying
and the 2008 defense and stuff, 2010 defense. So yeah, I'm saying right now with the state of the Steelers, I think you want them to match up against a beat up team or a team that's less physical than them, or somebody that just the quarterback is not elite. Like that to me is the three keys. And
let's do this then. So we won't be able to have this fun whether they're in or not next week. So let's rank the teams that we would rather play against or not play against. So who are you most scared of if we're in round 1, whether 6 or 7 seed?
Right. Me personally, that's a good question.
Cleveland.
Well, you can't. We have no chance of playing Cleveland, so we can't.
We're completely out of Cleveland.
Yeah, the possibilities would be,
the options are the Dolphins, the Chiefs, the Bills,
right?
Is it those 3?
And Jaguars, I think.
How would we play because the Jacksonville go to 2
Jacksonville was the 3 seed. If Jacksonville was the 3 seed and we were the 6,
can the Chiefs lose out the 3 seed, or when you say locked in, were the Chiefs deadlocked at 3?
No, I think they can have
locked at 3. They can.
I thought the Chiefs could be the 2 seed.
No, doesn't matter. They're resting everyone.
It's the winner of that Bills Miami game. So it's okay. So it's who would you rather play, Dolphins, Chiefs, or Bills? In what order?
I'd rather play the Chiefs first. I don't like.
So you want that 6 seed?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be great if we got the 6 seed because honestly, Travis Kelce, I don't know what's happened to him as the year going on. He looks slow and lethargic. He does not separate. So I actually think we'd have a realistic shot and maybe to contain him. And honestly, he just hasn't been the threat lately.
No, and their wide receiver
killed us. And
their other wide receiver
is not all that great. Rasheed Rice is really starting to come on because they start to feed him the ball a little bit, and he's a little shifty or whatever. But I'm not too afraid of the Chiefs wide receiver.
I think the Chiefs would come out and run the football against the Steelers, though. That's the thing with Pacheco.
That's true. Pacheco's really good.
I think we're focusing on the wrong thing. I think which team can we run on? I mean, that's gonna be the game. That's gonna be the win or not. If we can run on a team, we'll probably win. If you can't run, you probably don't. So I mean,
you can run
the
on the Bills?
No, no way. Dolphins
so?
top 5 defense.
No,
Chiefs,
I wasn't gonna say. I was saying not the Dolphins. So the Dolphins, but I mean, how different? They have no Bradley Chubb, and they have no Jalen Phillips. So how? I mean, how much?
Yeah, but that's more a function of edge rush than it is about them stopping the run.
Well, yeah, but if they want to,
and actually, Van Ginkel is probably he was running as a backup to those guys, but he might actually help.
He's good.
I feel like all 3 of those teams are pretty loaded for stopping the run, but I guess I would say, basically Kansas City's defense has 2 or 3 guys that can really play, but those guys are really good. Chris Jones is a problem.
Kind of sounds like the Steelers.
Yeah, but they're not. They don't have that depth in the front 7. So I'm once again I'm going to say the Chiefs. As scary as that is to think about, is just you can count on their receivers to drop some balls and kill their momentum, and you can count on their right tackle to get a couple of false starts or illegal formations against TJ Watt. That's a pretty good matchup for the Steelers right now. And the Dolphins, I'm supposing that they're going to be at least healthier. If Tyreek Hill and their offense is healthy against the Steelers, like, forget it, man. It doesn't matter if you can run against.
That's why I would say I'd almost just certainly rather play against the Bills than Dolphins. This kind of any way you cut it, unless somehow the entire offense gets injured. That's really where I'm at with the Dolphins. So who's the third team? It's the Dolphins, the Bills, and who else could be the 2 seed?
And the Chiefs. So
and then it's just the Chiefs. Yeah, so it's just those 3. So ideally, it seems like we're in agreement where it's the Chiefs. So what needs to happen for the 6th seed?
Oh shoot! I don't have that pulled up.
No, but it was like the Colts. I think we lost to the Colts, so we lost to Houston as well. So it can't be them.
The Jags lose, and
it has to be the Jags losing for sure. And then as far as what happens at the end, there,
the Bills need to. The Bills
have to lose as well. So Miami wins. And Miami wins and Jacksonville loses.
Isn't there something weird for us to get the 6th seed? That's the Denver scenario.
Here we go. God, this is not happening.
Okay.
So the Colts. So for it to happen, we have to have teams tie. So Jacksonville. God damn stupid. Sorry.
Although there was the Raiders Chargers game.
That thing was a joke.
that almost it should have ended in a tie. I mean, I'm saying it's like that. The Steelers were so unlucky in that game to not have it end in a tie. Right. I mean, they were so lucky, rather, because I think they made the playoffs, right? Because it wasn't a tie, and
they got embarrassed on live television.
Yeah. So to get the 6, the Jags and Bills both have to lose. The Steelers win.
Jags and Bills. Is that it? Jags, Bills, Steelers win. Where's the tie?
Yeah, ironically not.
There's no tie, so it's just I mean, that seems realistic. Am I wrong?
The Jags and the Bills losing?
Yeah, that's what. Now this
no
is
chance. No chance, man.
This is according to SteelersDepot.com. And then there's 2 other scenarios where we get the 6. So Jags tie, Bills win, Steelers win. Pittsburgh would get the 7, but if the Bills lose, Pittsburgh would get the 6. And then the last one is a tie between the Colts and the Texans, and the Steelers win with a Bills loss. Steelers fans, if we have not blown your mind yet, by a lot.
Blow their minds, but just confuse the hell out of everybody listening. Look, the Steelers win. They need some help, but it isn't. We've had worse scenarios. That year where the Kansas City kicker missed the kick, like you needed like 5 things to go right for the Steelers, and 4 of them happened, right? So it isn't that bad. But
I honestly think the world where we get the Bills for the first matchup is not that crazy. Where we get the 7 seed, the Bills beat the Dolphins. That seems like a decent likelihood. Then we get a Chiefs-Dolphins first round, which is pretty fun, actually.
Yeah. Who does Cleveland play then? They play the AFC South winner.
Yeah, I think no. Who was
South? That's all. That's all.
Yes. Because the AFC South is locked into the 4, so Cleveland's locked into playing one of those 2 teams.
Yep.
I mean, we'd all much rather see the Texans in there than the Colts.
Listen,
right?
if you have a casino near you, or you use DraftKings right now to do this, if you can bet the Ravens Browns in the AFC Championship game, it's happening. So take it from me.
Because so what would happen then is it would be the Steelers versus the Dolphins/Bills. As long as we get in at the 7, I'm scrapping the 6 scenario. As long as the Steelers get in at the 7,
And
the
they would
Browns would
likely
have to
playing
get
Buffalo. So
the Browns would have to get through Buffalo or us.
no, the Steelers would play Buffalo in round 1. Dolphins and
Chiefs.
oh yeah, so Browns and Ravens is more likely for the second round.
Yes,
Yeah.
that'd be the second round.
Okay.
So then what the Steelers could potentially draw is Bills and Chiefs, which if we said that at the beginning of the season, we'd be like, God, no. But that seems like the easier route than the other end.
To quote the late great Al Davis, just win, baby, win, and we'll let the rest of this shit figure itself out. I can tell you this: the AFC is a mess. However, the NFC is not. There are 5 teams that are locked in the playoffs, and there's just a few that need to win to get in. Brings to mind Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Win against Carolina, they're in. So let's lock in that 6 team right there.
But I'll say, I think there are 2 or 3 more teams still mathematically alive in the NFC than the AFC.
So
it's kind of weird.
The Packers are another. They clinch a berth with a win against Chicago. Simple as that. They win their end. The Seahawks get in with a Green Bay loss and a win.
Chicago, I'll tell you what, Chicago could dig themselves a mean hole if Justin Fields comes out, knocks the Packers out of the playoffs with an electric performance, and then they go and ship him out a couple months later.
The Saints can win the NFC South with a win and a Tampa Bay loss. So Tampa Bay would have to drop the game against Carolina. I just don't see that happening. The Vikings are one of those teams where they need a lot of shit to work, and I'm not even going to bother listing all the stuff they need to have happen to make it work. It's kind of ridiculous.
Who wants to see the in the playoffs anyways?
Yeah, no one.
Other than the other teams.
So the Falcons can make the playoff with a win and a Tampa Bay loss because they'd win the South, which is just that if there's another team I don't want to see play, it's the Atlanta Falcons.
Didn't that happen last year? Isn't that or something like, was it last year that, no, because they got Bijan. Something happened where a super garbage team snuck in and, I think it was the Giants, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Giants got pummeled.
An absolute garbage team snuck in and then got destroyed. Just hammered.
Got absolutely pummeled.
But we better pick some games or this podcast is going to be 3 hours long.
Barry say, with all of that in mind, Houston goes to Indy. Houston is favored by 1. Will, let's start with you.
I think now that CJ Stroud is healthy again, that Houston, they recover just enough from their late season malaise to win this game against the Colts. Colts have been a nice story. Gardner Minshew is a nice backup to have. But yeah, I think that's a game that Houston will win. I think it's a huge deal for them to go from having the number 1 pick to making the playoffs, and that's likely what will happen.
Yep. Corey.
Yeah, I'm taking Houston here. It's a shame with Tank Dell. It'd be nice if he was a part of this run. But Nico Collins is going to make a lot of money in this offseason. Now, what I'll be curious to see is if he goes to another team, if CJ Stroud's just an insane elevator, because no one thought Nico Collins was this good at the beginning of the year. No one. So is CJ Stroud this insane elevator, kind of, how Tom Brady was, where he'd get receivers paid and, get these other guys paid? Or is Nico Collins just that good? But regardless, right now, Nico Collins is putting up huge numbers. He's a touchdown machine, as far as I'm aware. I played him in fantasy twice, and I got destroyed by him. So he's a touchdown machine to me, at least. But I'm going with the Texans here. I'd rather watch them in the playoffs. I think they're just a better team.
That's fair. And wanted to point something out real quick. Corey, didn't you say something about Chicago winning a game and surprising people in the NFC?
Yes.
They are mathematically eliminated. They cannot reach the playoffs.
Oh no, I just said it because if Justin Fields knocks off their most hated rival,
Oh,
and
okay,
then,
sorry.
and
Then they
then,
have to move him 3 weeks
and
later.
then they just trade him away.
Gotcha. Sorry, that's my bad. I misheard you.
Did you
So,
know? This is actually a fun fact about that game. Are we going to pick it?
uh,
Kind of
no,
useless, right? No.
no,
Okay, we're
we're
not.
not. We're not.
Jordan Love with this season, I believe, would be somewhere impressive on the Chicago Bears, either single season passing record, or I think it's that. He's either top 10 or top 5 or something like that with his inaugural performance.
Yeah, I don't. No Bears quarterback has ever passed for 4,000 yards, ever.
So he
No
might be
one.
one. He might be number one, is what I saw.
Yeah,
This might be the That's what
Yeah.
that stat was.
So-
I didn't want to make bold claims, but yeah, that's
Too bad he's no good against man coverage. Wait.
but I'm kind
not
of
to
in the
rub
same
salt
boat.
in the wound or anything, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm kind of in the same boat as you guys, though, with Stroud being back and then him playing pretty well this past week. I think Houston's going to win and get in. Just remote, like Will said, remarkable that they go from a number 1 overall pick to a playoff team. And then honestly, the guy that everyone thinks they should have had now go number 1 when you look at how Bryce Young has looked in Carolina. So let's go on another one here. So I like Houston, the points. Big one, Atlanta going to New Orleans. New Orleans is favored by 3. I'll start off with this one. The Saints really need this on multiple levels for so many different reasons. If they lose, I really think it's the end of the Dennis Allen era with New Orleans. I think you see everyone seeing this is as good as we can get. Derek Carr's not exactly the guy they were hoping for. He's the most Jekyll and Hyde quarterback of this past year, if you ask me. So I like Houston, or not Houston, sorry. I like the Saints to win and cover by 3. They just really need this. Corey, let's go to you next.
Yeah, I think the Falcons. It blows my mind. It's so weird with the Falcons because they're talented, and their head coach sucks, but they don't utilize the talent, and they win more games than they should. So it's really weird. Nothing really happens how it's supposed to in Atlanta because, in theory, if you have a head coach who's not using his best talent, you're probably losing more games than you should. But they win more games than they should, especially for how they utilize their talent. I don't.
It's a conundrum.
Yeah, I know. It's very weird. And watching their games stink because they just give it to less talented guys than the guys on the field. It's really not jokes online. They don't give the ball to their best players. But I'm still rolling with the Saints here. I really don't think it matters if it's the end. I don't think it matters if it's the end of the Dennis Allen era. I don't think he's a head coach, really. I think he's a great DC. There's a lot of guys like that, but I don't think he's really a head coach. But when looking at this game, I think New Orleans wins just because they use their talent better. I mean, would anyone have guessed at the beginning of the season that a healthy carry Bijan would have had less than 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns?
Yeah, that's perplexing.
Yeah. Well, this is the team that had the number 1 run offense and then drafted Bijan Robinson first.
Right.
Anything could happen.
But so he needs 52 yards for 1,000 yards. So, I mean, it's possible. But 4 touchdowns, that's just kind of crazy. It's just gross, misuse of assets. So I just wish they get Arthur Smith out of there for that reason. But, yep, taking the Saints.
Will.
Yeah, I'm taking the Saints. I can't, Corey enunciated most of it. I can't imagine that the Falcons are even as good as they are, as mediocre as they are at this point. But they do have a chance to be 8-9 and hosting a playoff game, which is one of those things of oh, great. So, and the Steelers are, fighting at 9-8 or 10 or even 10-7 to get into the playoffs, right? But yeah, I just playing at home in the Superdome, I think is a bit of a boost. And honestly, I feel like the Saints need the win for their season not to be disappointing, whereas Atlanta, I think, has already overachieved for what people thought they were going to do. So there's a little less pressure on them that way.
All right, one last game. Corey, we're going to start off with you here. Buffalo going to Miami, probably, the landmark game the NFL wants to highlight this week. Buffalo is favored by 3 heading into Miami. Kick us off.
I do want to give Will his flowers real quick. I'm pretty sure he outlined this exact scenario happening probably 3 weeks ago. And I even was like, oh, I don't know about the Dolphins kind of having that kind of slide. He's like, no, I think it could happen. It's got a pretty good chance. And it did happen. It's what is it, Monday Night Football?
Yeah.
Or is it?
So, yeah.
Yeah. So Monday
Sunday
Night Football or Sunday
Sunday
Night.
night
Is there
football.
Monday? Is
I
there
don't
no
think there
Monday
is a
night?
Monday. In
Yeah, I
that.
think they don't have the Monday because of the playoff implications.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, Sunday night game, the only 7 o'clock slate. This is a huge game. Tua has a bit of a, tendency to kind of crumble in these big games still, where he kind of lays eggs against good teams. I know he's proved it wrong a couple times, but he's also kind of played into it a few times. It seems like when the moment gets big, he's not really a riser, even if he doesn't collapse. So I'm going to go with the team that's kind of been there before with the Bills. The Dolphins, if they're completely healthy, are terrifying, but they're just so thin on that O-line right now that I'm going to take the Bills to cover on this one.
All right,
I think the Bills, I mean, in fairness, Kansas City's the same way, are a team that is better than their record. And I feel like this, especially coming down the stretch here, that they played some really good football, much better than they did earlier in the year. I just can't get past the Miami injuries and their situation. Their situation is they're going to the playoffs no matter what. And yes, they would like to be at home for a game, but honestly, the difference for them being healthy and having a road game next week versus being beat up even more and having a home game next week, I feel like I take their chances being healthy. I feel like if the Miami's healthy, there's a lot of teams they can beat or should beat or have a shot.
Probably every team.
Right.
Straight up.
But if they're not healthy, they can be at home. It doesn't matter. They have a chance to get beaten by a lot of teams. So, yeah, I feel like this is a game that Miami has to tread this delicate balance between trying to stay healthy with the guys that are all injured and trying not to lose the division. But honestly, if you're already in that boat where you're having to like balance between those two thoughts, you're sunk. Whereas Buffalo, I think, has one objective, and that is to win this freaking game and to win the division and set things right for their season because, this is where everybody thought that they would be at the beginning of the year. So I kind of feel like it just sets up right now for Buffalo to win the division. But Miami had those games. They had Dallas and the Ravens. I mean, that's, and being beat up on top of that, like that's a recipe for going over.
Just something crazy I want to say real quick. Think of it how crazy it is. Think of all the emotions we felt watching the Steelers, especially during the middle of the season and right towards the end of when Canada got fired. And the Steelers are one win versus a, half sitting team against the Ravens, and the Bills are a loss versus an 11-5 Dolphins team away from those two teams having the same record. And think of how we felt all throughout the season, and this is where we are.
Yeah, imagine how the Bills fans feel. Right. Oh my God! The same with the Chiefs. So yeah, yes, kudos. I think this is just evidence of what it's a big bell curve every year in the NFL, and when you have 7 playoff slots, there's just going to be a lot more teams in the middle of that bell curve than at either end, and so you should be in contention no matter what you do and how messed up your early part of your season was or late part of your season was. You should still have a shot. We'll see how it goes. I guess. Oh, now we have to pick a Steelers game against
so
an opponent that we don't even know who's going to play. Good luck.
So here's the thing, fellas. I still haven't picked this game, and I'm going to make it really simple. Bills are going to win, and it's for all the reasons that you two already said that I couldn't get to.
Just start making your picks first, man.
Right. Yeah, I know. Like, I'm done letting y'all go first. That's gone moving forward. Next year, it's going to be different, dictator style here. But no, Pittsburgh, obviously traveling to Baltimore, playoffs on the line. Pittsburgh's favored by 3.5 on the road. I'm a little surprised at that. I understand Lamar's not playing, but still got a lot to do to make the playoffs. I do like Pittsburgh to win here. I just don't think Baltimore plays their guys all that long. I could really see a quarter of like, let's play the starters maybe into the second quarter. But boy, I'm thinking long term here. This game means nothing to them, outside of pride alone. And they're gunning for the big trophy at the end of the year. They've already got the division crown. They've got nothing to play for other than let's just go out there and play and just, make it tough on our rivals. What's more important, eliminating our rivals or making it through deep into the playoffs? I'm siding with the latter. Pittsburgh finds a way to win this game. I like going up against Tyler Huntley versus Todd Monken better than I did Tyler Huntley versus Greg Roman personally, because you're forcing Huntley to make passes now, which is not his strong suit. His big thing has been running. He's not a super great thrower all over the field. So I like that matchup. I think we can have some success against that. Watt, Highsmith, Hayward, Ogunjobi, potentially crashing the pocket if they, keep it.
We didn't mention him. Ogunjobi actually played a pretty solid game last week. We've been asking for more from him. He was a bit of a disruptor.
But so score wise, good Lord. I don't think we're gonna see a 30-point performance. Like that's where you really go buy a lottery ticket, Steeler fans. If we hang 33 games in a row, go grab your Powerball ticket because you might just win. But I don't see that happening. I think it's going to be something like 23-10. I don't see Baltimore putting up too many points just because I think they pull people at some point, and we're going to keep our stars in there just to make sure we secure the win. So I like 23-10. Let's go to Will next.
Jeremy, do you know how many years it's been since the Pittsburgh Steelers scored 23 points against the Ravens?
How many years do we get to play almost all their backups?
Well, even against the backups, they beat us 28-10.
Stop! I don't want to hear that.
With Ben Roethlisberger quarterback, I might add. The last 7 games against the Ravens, Steelers have scored 17 points, 16, 14, 16, 20, 19, and 10.
This makes me feel good about my score prediction that I have in my head.
So does the Rudolph holiday magic stop at the new year?
Well,
that's a good line, Jeremy.
I feel like the Ravens are going to win this game, even though they're playing their back. Like I said before, my argument was they have some talented guys who just don't get to play very much, who are going to be in this game, and hungry to knock out their division rival. The chance to knock for the backups. This is like their Super Bowl, right? I gotta believe. It's funny. Psychology is a funny thing. If you're the Steelers, do you think to yourself, I'm a Steelers player. If we can just win this game, I think we have a chance to make it to the Super Bowl. Like, no, they're like, if we win this game, we get to go to the playoffs. That's great. And we're going to get our asses kicked. I mean, in their heart of hearts, I think they understand that that's the deal. That does not make for, like, I'm just a big fan that team sports, the mixed messages, the stuff that's in your head is what gets you in trouble. When everybody on the team is together and they're all focused on this one task, you can do anything. You can even overachieve with a team that's not as good as the other team. You can have your Boise State versus Oklahoma or whatever, right? But yeah, when you had a quarterback situation, you got George Pickens, who is suddenly now, the toast of the town, despite the fact that you as his teammate know what he's done this season in other games and, his maturity level, so on and so forth. So that's a long way of saying I think the Steelers might even make it to 20 in this game. Maybe, but I'll take, for the moment, I'll take the Ravens 23-17. But I'll be shocked if the Steelers get more than 20 points in this game.
So to be clear, you picked the Ravens to win?
I did.
Okay. No, that's fine. I want to make sure I heard you right.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot's being made of playing their backups, but I think that's a tough ask for the Steelers to win 3 in a row. That's another thing. Without looking, when's the last time the Steelers won 3 games in a row?
Oh, don't do that to us. Like, we probably haven't done that in a while.
Yeah, I'm saying when you look at it that way, it's like their consistency level is, Been tough sometimes.
Would you agree though that the offense has played its best ball in these last 2 weeks? Though, can they replicate that again?
But yes, playing against defenses that were not particularly good. So
That's fair. That's fair.
I mean, those are two bottom five defenses in Baltimore. Even playing, less than its full complement of guys is still a top two defense in the league, maybe. So yeah, different story. And here's the thing: their coaching, offense and defense,
superb.
It's superb. Meaning they'll get the most out of whoever it is that plays for them, right?
Yeah.
By the way, the Steelers won 4 in a row at the end of last season.
That's what I just looked up.
Yeah. But other than that,
Nothing this year.
That was Carolina Panthers, the Las Vegas Raiders, a Baltimore Ravens team that was more beat up than they are now, and the Cleveland Browns. So, could be done.
Corey, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm kind of I feel like the Mike Tomlin, what outsiders call it, the Mike Tomlin devil magic is just in full effect right now. Feels like we're destined to win at this point. Plus, I remember me and Jeremy were in a very similar situation last year where we both were 1 win away going into the last game of the season from having the correct picks. And I'm not sure if Jeremy remembers. Me and Jeremy both picked a 10-7 record this year. Will, on the other hand, picked
I picked 9 this year, I think.
Yeah, I think you picked 9. So last year you picked like 6 wins or something. So regardless, it's a much better showing from you this year. But I have the utmost confidence that me and Jeremy are about to nail the record prediction for 2 years in a row due to Mike Tomlin's devil magic. Something in me says that we win and we don't get in the playoffs, which would be just perfect for this year. Never had a losing season. Corey and Jeremy get the record prediction right. And, we don't have to watch.
We're still picking 20. Yeah.
Yeah. The record prediction doesn't, we don't have to watch ourselves get thumped on live TV, but I'm going to go with the Steelers winning 17-16. I don't know how we get to that point, but that's the score I picked.
All right. Well, you have it there.
I'll be honest with you. The last few weeks of the NFL season, nothing has really made much sense. So,
no.
I have full confidence in your ability to pick better than I can pick right now. I feel really good about myself every year picking the early part of the season, but yeah, it's been very difficult the last few weeks because you find out who is actually still cares about winning, for starters, or who is who is the team that has to have their backs against the wall 100% in order to win the game, so like that Seattle last week, I just feel like
that team folded.
Yeah, they almost had this feeling of we can win next week and probably still get in, which is not necessarily true. But if you feel that way, like I said, mixed messages in your head, bad idea.
Yeah. But one thing I'll point out here before we leave, and I would not have thought this coming into this game, but with the way he's played the last 2 games, Najee Harris only needs 77 yards to eclipse his 1,000-yard mark this year. I did not know he was going to get that earlier in the year with just how bad we were playing, but he's pretty close. So I do think we're going to come out. I think we're going to run the ball better than I think we anticipate. I think he wants to get that mark. And, for all the crap we give Najee Harris, he's actually never missed an NFL game. He's suited up for everyone. He's had 1,000 yards every year he's been in the league. So that workhorse moniker is still there. So maybe we can ride him to another win. We certainly did last week.
And I think the thing with Najee is kind of, that pick kind of goes to show you what running backs are valued as. Because how many games have you felt that Najee has been like the reason we won since he entered the league? And he has, 2 or 3. It's 3 now, right? 3,000-yard seasons.
Yeah.
So, that kind of shows you where the running back position is. Jalen Warren's at 751, averaging 5.4 yards a carry. Najee's averaging 4. So,
if they feed you enough and you play enough games in the season, your chances of making to 1,000 is pretty good if you're healthy.
I mean, there's 17 games now. It's 16. It's 17. Yeah, 17 games now. So
yeah, but
it'll be
anyway,
cool for him.
Yep. Anyways, that'd be a fun little mark for him to get. And then, if TJ Watt really would like to slam the door home and try to just outpace the Myles Garrett talk a little bit more for all this, national media talk of Myles Garrett being the obvious choice for defensive MVP. It'd be nice for him to have a big game. It'll be interesting to see how long Baltimore keeps its starters. And honestly, they've been rotating Ronnie Stanley and Macari all year at left tackle based on who's playing better, I think. And I can't name their right tackle off the top of my head now. I hate when I go down there.
Just one quick question. I'm kind of looking at the stats now. Who do you think the number 3 player is in receiving yards?
For the Steelers?
Yes, for the Steelers.
Oh, I mean, I won't participate because I already know that. So
Jalen Warren.
It is Jalen Warren.
Yep. Absolutely. He catches balls all the time. So, I mean, if there's ever been someone to bank on a or a betting thing, always take Warren with the over on catches. He gets the over almost every single week, people. If you're really into betting, always take the over on receptions for Warren.
Granted, he has 3 more games played, but he has 9 more catches than Deontay Johnson.
Yeah, that's nuts, man.
Wow.
That's nuts. Hey, by the way, if Najee Harris gets his 1,000 yards at roughly 58 yards a game, he will move into the top 53 all-time Steelers yards per game in a season.
Wow.
Wait.
I'm joking. It's like 50. The getting 1,000 yards in a 17-game season is
not that hard.
Particularly impressive.
Yeah, when what you only have to average 70 yards a week to do that?
Yeah, exactly. 58. It's worse.
Yeah,
58.2 yards.
Even worse. So really, the 1,000-yard mark really doesn't mean a whole lot more other than just to say you got it anymore. But
I bet not too many running backs have that number this year, if I had to guess.
That's fair. Don't get me wrong, but you know what I mean. When the benchmark is 1,000 yards and you only have to average 58 yards to get there.
Well, like I said, it's if the team continues to feed you enough and you are healthy enough, you should get there.
So I have a great stat for you, and you guys will get a kick out of this. I was gonna hold it off, but since you brought that up, Najee Harris has more rushing yards since 2021 than Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley, Dalvin Cook, and Christian McCaffrey. You know what? You want to know what the difference though is? So
games played.
Well, attempts. He has 820 attempts in that span. Nick Chubb only has 558. Dalvin Cook 597. Christian McCaffrey 655. And Saquon Barkley 704.
So just another fun little stat looking at this.
He only outpaces everyone by like 120 carries.
This is what I'm saying. He plays for the right team if you want to accumulate yards.
Right.
There are 6 running backs already with 1,000 yards. I'm only going to say 5 because there are 5 that have played 16 games, or 4 that have played 16 games. Kyron Williams has played 12 games and is number 2 in the NFL in rushing yards right now. He has played 4 entire less games than the other guys.
95.3 yards a game. Arguably, their team MVP for sure.
And if you guys are curious, Will, you said it's 58 yards a game?
Yeah, so he's 21st in the NFL this year in yards per game.
Well, I'm looking down. Najee is at 57.7 yards a game. So, he's on pace to not get it, but
he might.
He might get there.
I love that. Well, thank you again, Steeler fans, for tuning into an extra long edition of the SteelerFury.com podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Coleman. You know me as Smith is Smoking on the message boards, joined by Will Massasak. You know him as Bradshaw to Ben, and Corey Karbowski. You know him as Corey 39. So, fingers crossed, we'll see this podcast next week might have a very different tune to it or another very different tune to it. So you'll just have to tune in to find out.
Go get them, Steelers.
Yep, go get them, Steelers.
Another